you ever wondered how players like Eric Johnson effortlessly play strange looking but lovely sounding chords? In this video I'm going to show you how the pros do it using something called spread triads. Hi everyone, my name is Andy Ridgway and my channel is all about making you a better guitarist with the least amount of effort possible. In this video we're going to look at how we can play spread triads. Stick around to the end because I'll show you how you can apply this to your own playing, and I'll even show you a little chord progression so you can put everything you've learned together. If you're not familiar with what triads are, I did a whole video about them which I'll put a link to up here on the screen. But just to give you the gist of it, a triad is basically a 3-note chord as the name implies, and it consists of a root note and then a third, which could be a major or a minor third, and then a fifth. So for example, a major triad has a root note, let's say a G, and then a major third, which is the third note of the G major scale, which would be this, and then the fifth note of the major scale, which would be this. In fact, if you play a chord of G, you can see those notes. There's the root note, there's the third, and the fifth is played on the open D. On a piano, it'll be nice and orderly in a row. Sometimes on the guitar, when we play chords, the notes are a little bit jumbled. For example, this chord here, you've got a root note, then the fifth is there, then another root note, then the third, fifth, and another root note. Anyway, a spread triad gets rid of all this clutter that we don't really need. It takes just the triad, which is on its own fine, but a little bit bassy and a bit muddy. And what it does is it takes the middle note, the third, and puts it out of the way an octave higher. So you end up with this. You get the G, the fifth, which is the D, and the third is up here, the fourth fret on the G string. So when I play these three notes together, I get this. Okay, very neat chord. Now this is what people like Eric Johnson do all the time. I keep mentioning Eric Johnson's name because although lots of people use it, he's really famous for it. He uses it in his solos and his chord playing. So what we've got now is a G major triad, a spread triad. It might look familiar. You might think, hang on a minute, that's hiding within this G chord here. And yes, it is. But again, there's more here than we really need. So we strip it down to these notes. With this hand, you can play this with your fingers. You can play thumb, index, and middle. Or you can play pick, middle, and third. Doesn't really matter. Of course, you can pick them all separately, which is nice for soloing. So that's a G major triad. So a minor third is the same thing, but this time instead of a major third, we flatten it and make a minor third. So we get this, this, and this. Okay, we could play it like this with a bar. That's perfectly fine. So they're the two main chords we can play with a root note starting here on the E string. Let's now do the same thing, but let's take a C chord this time. And we've got a root note here on the A string. Let's find the major triad. So we could go like this. We could take a root note, a third, and a fifth. But as always with spread triads, we'll take the middle note, the third, and chuck it up an octave. So we've got this. That's 3 on the A string, 5 on the D, and 5 on the B string. So we've got this uncluttered sound. And then the minor version of this would be take this third here and flatten it to there. 4th fret on the B string. We've got that sound. So as I said earlier, we're going to put this into a chord progression. We're going to do a basic chord progression now and then make it more interesting later on. So this is what we're going to do. In the key of G, let's take the first chord, G. We'll strum it for now. Then we'll take a D chord like this. It's on the 5th fret. E minor on the 7th fret. This is using an A minor shape. And then we'll play a C here on the 3rd fret. But we'll take the spread triads hiding within those chords and it's going to look like this. Okay, so that's 3, 5, and 4. For the D chord, we're going to play a root note, a fifth, and a third like this. 5, 7, and 7 on the B string. Then we're going to move over to the E minor chord, but we're going to strip it down to the root, the fifth, and the minor third. And then we're going to come back to the C chord, but strip it down to root, fifth, and major third. That's 3, 5, and 5. Okay, and we'll do a bar of each. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. And it's far more interesting than just going. Which is kind of okay, but it's a bit boring and predictable and a bit lumpy. We don't need all those notes. Now let's take things to a slightly more advanced level. When you play a triad, you can also do what's called an inversion of a triad, which is instead of having the root, third, and fifth, you start from the third, you go third, fifth, and then put the root over here. Okay, so starting from the G, instead of G, B, D, we'd have B, D, G, like that. So what we could do, you could play it like this. But again, it's kind of muddy sounding. There's too much going on in the low end. So let's take the middle note, the fifth, and we'll put it up an octave. So we end up with this. We end up with our third here, then our root note, and our fifth is up here. So we've got, and this is a gorgeous sounding chord. So still a G chord, it's called a first inversion of a G, okay? So I'm playing second fret on the A string, fifth fret on the D string, and third fret on the B. If you find that too stretchy, there is a shortcut. What you can do is you can play it like this. You can play seventh fret on the low E string, 5 on the D string, and 7 on the G. It sounds the same notes. I find that this one here being further down is a little bit brighter sounding, but it's the same notes. It's a bit harder to find this one because it's a little bit further away from our kind of landmark chord of G, but at least we know it's there. Okay. Now, if we do the same thing with the minor chord, we end up with this. Unfortunately, the minor third would be here, and I don't really fancy that. That's going to be really stretchy. So instead, we're going to do this. We're going to play a minor third. Here's a G. Here's a G minor. We're going to play the minor third here, the root note here, and we're going to play the fifth here. I have to think then. So we've got this. A minor triad from the minor third, the root, and then the fifth. Have a listen. Here's G minor, and there's another G minor. Let's try the same with this chord of C. So we could play what we had before, which was this, but now we're going to start from the third. So we're going to play this note, the root note, and then the fifth here. Oops. And the minor third, sorry, the minor equivalent, C minor, would be again really stretchy. So what we'll do instead is we'll play the minor third here, we'll play the root note here, and we'll play the fifth here. So we've got, okay. Still quite stretchy. I've got 6 on the A string, 5 on the G, and 3 on the top E. If you find that too stretchy, you can play this. But it's quite stretchy. It's not my favourite minor chord. Frankly, I prefer just to stick to the one we did before. What we're going to do now is we're going to go back to our initial chord progression, which was G, D, E minor, C, and we're going to add one of those inversions, just one of them. What we'll do is we'll go G, D, E minor, and then we'll go this one, which is the first inversion of G, also called G over a B bass note, G/B, and then we'll come back to the C. So we've got this, 1, 2, 3, 4, D, 2, 3, 4, E minor, G over B, C, 2, 3, 4, I'll play that again. To the beginning. So try that with me. We've got G, then the D triad, the E minor, and then for half a bar we'll do half a bar of this slightly stretchy one. Remember, you can play it here if you want. I'm going to do this one. It's still just a G chord, but it's got a bass note of B, and then over to the C triad. So what else could we do with this? Well, we could take other chords in the key of G and we can make all of them into triads. For example, we could go the first chord in G, is that. Then you've got A minor, where we could play, here's an A minor, here's the spread triad, 5, 7, 7. B minor, we could do this, we could go 7, 9, 7. But I like to do a little trick with this one. I like to sharpen the fifth. You get a really weird but pretty sound like this. You get 7, 10, 7. The C chord we could play here, 8, 10, 9, or here, D, as we did before, E minor, and if we want we could play this little diminished triad here, which is basically a root note, the minor thirds here, and this is a flattened fifth or diminished fifth. We've got, sounds kind of strange on its own, but not when you resolve it back to the G chord. Let me do that again. We've got G, the 1 chord, 2 chord, 3 chord, 4 chord, 5, 6 chord, 7 chord, and back to the 1 chord. Now, when you're soloing in the key of G, you don't have to play the same triad that, say, the rhythm section or the bass player or the keyboard player is playing, you can actually solo with any of those in the key of G as chords or as single notes. For example, you could go... So the next inversion we're going to look at is the second inversion, which is where you start on the fifth and then you go root note and then the third. But again, the middle note, we stick it up an octave higher. So let's just quickly recap. Here's a G triad. We've got G, B, D. We're going to start this time on the fifth. So we've got fifth, root note, third, just like in this chord here. We're going to take the root note and put it an octave higher. So we've got... So that is still a G chord, but a second inversion and a spread triad. Watch what happens if I play the three different inversions. We've got the root position, we've then got the first inversion, and then a second inversion. They're all the same chord. But we've got some interest now. We can do more with this. I'm going to go a step further now. I'm going to take another G root position, but this time I'm going to start on this G, and I'm going to put the fifth here and a third here. That is 5, 3, 7. If you don't like stretching, you can do it like this. You can go 5 on the D string, 7 on the G, 7 on the top E. So we've got, okay, so all together I've got root position, first inversion, second inversion, and back to a root inversion. Or root position, I should say. Okay, let's do the same with the other major chord. Let's try this. So we've got, this is our original A-shaped bar chord turned into a spread triad. So we can play a first inversion like this. We could then start on the fifth, which is here. We could put our third here and our root note an octave higher, but it's a bit stretchy, but it works. I've got 5, 5, and 8. Okay, let's now do the minor ones. We could take G minor, we could do our root position that we learned before, like this. We could do a first inversion, which would be this note here, then our root note here, and then our fifth here. We could then do a second inversion, which would start on the fifth. It would then go to the minor third and put the root up here on the top E. So we've got, I'm just barring that, so I've got 5, 3 on the G, and 3 on the top E. Okay, let's try the same with this kind of bar chord, an A minor shape. So there's a C minor. Let's take our original minor chord. Let's now try a first inversion. So we're going to put a minor third here, a root note here, and a fifth here. Let's now try a second inversion. So we're going to play the fifth, and then we'll put the minor third here, and the root's over there. No thanks, I don't like that much. I will give you a more useful minor chord though. Let's say we want to play a G minor triad starting from this one here. This G here, we can play a root, fifth, and a minor third. Okay, like that. Let's now put everything we've learnt together. So we had this chord progression that went G, D, E minor, C, which we did like this. We then elaborated, we added after the E minor, we had half a bar of that, and then we added this little first inversion of G. So we had that kind of thing. You can do any timing you want, but I would probably do a bar of this, 2, 3, 4, a bar of this, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's make it more interesting. Let's play the G instead of like this, we'll play it like, say, this, or like this. I'm going to do the stretchy one. So I've got G, I've then got my D here, E minor, and my C like that. In fact, why don't we add another chord in there? Let's add an A minor. So the chord's going to go now, play the G here, and I can play the A minor here. This is a nice one. Root note, fifth, third. Okay, so I've got G, A minor, D, and then E minor, first inversion of G, C. How lovely is that? 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4 again. so on. Don't forget you can play any of these as a solo, of course. You could play it like this. And so on. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching. I hope that was useful too. If so, please click like and subscribe. You'll be helping me massively. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.